Thank you, each and every one of you, for coming today. I'm sure it's quite obvious to all of you that we gather here once again for the third time in 18 months, and we gather here today under very different circumstances. We gather with very, very heavy hearts. My grandfather purchased this plot 89 years ago, and I'm sure I can speak for all of my brothers and sisters and family members that today is certainly the saddest occasion in our lifetimes that we have been here. We gather here together today to mourn. We gather here to grieve. We gather here in a joint effort to seek solace, some comfort in the passing of a loved one who I think we all feel her time on this earth was just a little too short, ended just a little too soon. And we are all in our own individual ways trying to process what has happened, trying to understand it, and I think we are all struggling to accept it. I hope that today's ceremony and the memorial service this afternoon will enable all of us to attain that understanding and that acceptance that we seek. Now, we all know that Rosemary, or Posey as we call her, we've known to all of us, she grew up in rural Pennsylvania with her brother and her 4 sisters on a dairy farm that her father owned. She worked on that dairy farm till age 26, and she did pretty much everything on that farm. She drove the tractors, she baled hay, she milked the cows, she took care of the barn cats, the herding dog. She did it all. And when I say that she worked on that farm, I'm talking about a kind of never-ending hard work that few in this crowd have experienced. Now, with that exception, I see Bozzy, Posey's sister Dorothy over there, and she knows exactly what I am talking about, okay? Posey once told me that her father, who milked the cows twice a day, you know, if you were on a dairy farm, 4 p.m., 4 a.m., that in 36 years, he only missed 9 milkings. Think of that for dedication. And to give you another idea of how hard that Posey worked on that farm, that for her, getting married, cooking for Jimmy, no small task, washing Jimmy's clothes, cleaning house, 3 responsibilities, by the way, that my mother was happy to pass on to Posey. Raising 4 children, that was all a relief from the farm work that she did for the first 26 years. But growing up in that farm instilled in Posey country values. And she adopted country ways, which she kept for the rest of her life. So, for example, when she came to Milton and learned that we let the cat live in the house and that the dogs lived in the house, she was appalled. I remember her telling me, would you let the cow live in the house? Would you let the pig and the goat? And in her mind, a cat and a dog were working animals and they didn't belong in the house. So she had her country ways. And despite the fact that she left the dairy farm to get married and moved away from Pennsylvania never to return, she nevertheless remained a country girl at heart for her entire life. That was even reflected in her nickname, Posey. We all know that posy is a traditional term for a bouquet of flowers. What an appropriate description for Posey, a bouquet of flowers. So when I use that and think of her as a bouquet of flowers, I think of each flower as an aspect of her personality and an aspect in one of her roles in life. And this was not a small bouquet, this was a deep, thick, complicated bouquet of flowers. So let's talk a little about some of those aspects of that bouquet, those individual flowers. First, I think the most striking thing that we all remember about her, she loved to smile. Look at this photograph that Jim and the children picked out for her, showing that smile. What a great smile. Boy, that's the way I think we will all want to think of her. She loved to laugh. She loved to sit and talk. She loved music. She loved to read. She read avidly. She liked mystery novels, all kinds of things, and the Bible in particular. She was an exceptional horticulturist. I don't think we could hire a team of men to maintain the yard and the flowers and the plants that she maintained and do as good a job as she did with those. She loved birds. She was dedicated to keeping them fed. Even the wild turkeys came by and fed from her bird feeders. She also had a very quick and a very sharp mind, which was formidably on display when she watched Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, which she very rarely missed, by the way. She was exceptional with puzzles, all kinds, crossword puzzles, Sudoku, traditional puzzles. Posey's idea of going away on a vacation, a weekend getaway, was to buy a 500 or a 1,000 piece puzzle that consisted mainly of blue sky and open ocean. And by the end of that weekend, should have it all put together. An amazing ability, really, really amazing. And if we continue with the bouquet of flowers analogy, she had many roles in life. She was wife to Jim, 40 years, mother to Rachel, Holly, Pamela, and Andrew, grandmother to Ruby and Colton, a cherished and coveted role that she had. She was friend to many and sister to all in the congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. These roles that she performed kind of reminded me of the work on the dairy farm. She performed these consistently, daily, reliably, quietly, and without fanfare. Posey was not the kind of person to brag. Posey didn't toot her own horn. She was not pretentious. She was not arrogant. She was not vain. She just went about her business. She liked her roles. She enjoyed her roles. She got satisfaction from her various roles. She was nobody's fool. Posey valued honesty in people. She had no guile. She was never deceptive, never deceitful. You always knew where she stood, and you always knew what she thought. She didn't seek praise. She didn't seek recognition. She was just happy to do the things that she did quietly, steadily, regularly, every day. And one of the things that has been happening in these last 2 weeks as I talk to people is people have said, gee, I remember this that she did. I remember this aspect of her. I remember when she said this. I remember when she said that. So I think that as we look into the bouquet, we're going to discover little flowers over time that we didn't know were there or that we had maybe forgotten about. And I think that's a very healthy process, and it says something about her, how she lived her life quietly and unassumedly. And I think there is a lesson and a role model in that for all of us. We're now going to hear from several family members who would like to share their thoughts and memories of Posey with us. And first, I'd like to call upon her daughter, Rachel Calabrese. Rachel, come on, step forward, step up here, and share some of your thoughts with us.
Well, it's windy. I hope you can hear me. And I haven't got the emotional stability of an IKEA table right now, so I'll try to get through this as slowly as I can. Last week, Jeff Forpening, who is giving her service later this afternoon, asked the family to send him some of our favorite stories about Mom. And he specifically asked her children how we've benefited from her influence as adults. And I thought, words just seem so feeble at a time like this. How do you begin to describe her influence? Because when a mother dies, we lose a piece of who we are. We lose the person whose story provides the very beginning of our own. However, as we all started to share the things we appreciated the most, there was a common thought that ran through all of them. Appreciating Mom's strong faith, her depth of knowledge, not just of the Bible, but on many subjects, her generosity, her love of flowers and musicals, her disdain for hypocrisy, and also for cooking, which I've seemed to inherit. Yeah. My mother, Rosemary, was a woman like no other, and there's no words that I can say to describe how important that she was to my family and I, and what a powerful influence not only she was, but will continue to be to all of us.
Thank you, Rachel. Beautifully said from the heart. I'd now like to call on Rachel's husband, Steve Calabrese, who would like to share some of his memories with us.
Do we have enough tissues? So one of the things that thing that I like to share is one of my first memories of Rosie. It was when I first met her the first time. So Rachel and I had been dating for a few weeks, and I wanted to meet her parents, much to her bewilderment. So we made an arrangement. Later that week, I'd come by with Rachel about 7 o'clock to meet her parents. I didn't realize at the time that would have been a scheduling conflict with Rosie, because, as Uncle Rob mentioned, 6:55 every night she was in her pajamas and robe so she could watch Wheel of Fortune at 7. So we arrived, and after an appropriate introduction to Jim, Rachel leads me into the other room where Posey was sitting down, getting ready to watch. As if her standard was, if you want to meet me, boy, you come to me. Yeah. Right? It was similar, I think, when Jim wanted to get her phone number the first time that he wanted to date her. You can find my phone number if you want.
Yeah.
So I walked over, briefly blocking her view of Pat Sajak. That was strike one. To give her a hug and a kiss. At which point, an awkward aura fell upon the room as Andy, Rachel, Pam, and Holly, who were all there, were as if to say, my word, he just hugged Mom. He just kissed Mom. Yeah. That's never happened before. Is she going to be okay? I didn't know that big, warm, touchy-feely hugs were not in her wheelhouse, but they were in mine, so that's what she got. The hug was strike 2. Pat Sajak was strike 1, the hug was strike 2. But I was able to crawl out of that strike 2 count, marry her daughter and supply her with 2 grandchildren. And some of the qualities that Uncle Rob already mentioned are the ones that we'll really remember her by. While hugs and kisses weren't in her wheelhouse of comfort-inducing activities, it didn't mean that she wasn't loving. She was very loving. She loved her family very much. She loved Jehovah very much. And she was kind, patient, and generous, and those are qualities that we'll definitely remember her for. We know that she adored her grandchildren, Colton and Ruby. She was always buying them gifts, writing them cards, commending them on their good report cards. And they loved, as Uncle Rob mentioned, doing puzzles with her in Disney every year. We do 2 or 3 puzzles, and that's something that we loved to do, and we'll miss doing that.
Thank you, Steve. Now I'd like to ask Pamela if she'd like to come forward and offer some of her thoughts and comments.
Great. So I have at least one visual aid here. Can I not? Oh, okay.
There's
All
a
right.
hole under there.
Okay, my heels are digging into the ground here. So a couple of the thoughts that I wanted to share stem basically from the fact that you really get to know your parents differently as adults than when you're kids. So I was looking through a box of memories that my mom kept one for each child from like our schoolwork, some accomplishments. She kept this one. It's an award that I gave her. Mother, it says, receives the award for the most helpful family member because She always helps me to study for tests when it's 10 o'clock at night and she wants to go to bed. So as a kid, I always thought, why does mom go to bed so early? Steve mentioned that. Now that I'm an adult, I'm like, she was so wise, that woman. She totally gets it. Yes, like, she knows where it's at. The second memory that I want to share is a poem that I wrote that she kept. You know, as for those of you who don't know, my family, we're Jehovah's Witnesses. And so I wrote this poem when I was in 3rd grade. I was 8 years old. And apparently it made it into the Milton Times. And now, you know, I remember thinking, oh, I was really proud of that poem. And rereading it, I thought, I don't know how much of this I actually wrote. So, Mom always helped us with our schoolwork. She was there every single day when we got home from school. And it was tough. I mean, with 3 kids, trying to help them take out your stuff and look what it is, and we didn't want to, and it's a lot. But she helped me with this assignment. So I'm going to read it, and why don't you can judge what you think I wrote and what you think she wrote. I also want to point out that in 3rd grade, I think I peed my pants, so I don't think I was operating on a really like high level of brain activity. So we'll see like what this says. Okay, the poem is called Mother. If you have a mother, let me make it very clear that Mother's Day is coming, and it's almost here. Now, moms, we'd like to thank you from the bottom of our hearts and to congratulate you on how well you do your part. Your mother's like a dove, cooing softly from above, and gives you gentle correction and valuable direction. Your mother's nice and kind and gentle and cool, and she helps you with your homework that you need for school. She drives you to the mall and to your friend's house, but she'll pass on touching your friendly little mouse. Your mother cooks and cleans and takes care of the dog, which I always wanted and never really got. She even cleans your room when it looks like a hog's. And when your mom's on the couch sewing something for you, you know it will be from her heart, and you know her heart is true. When you wake up and your stomach hurts and your mother comes in and soon she gives you some strawberry ice cream and you're sleeping back in your bedroom. Whatever gift we give you doesn't mean that much, but it's the love we feel for you that your heart would like to touch. And so that's what I'm guessing my mom and I sort of co-wrote about moms. As you know, as Jehovah's Witnesses, we don't necessarily observe Mother's Day because our viewpoint is that we want to make our moms feel our appreciation every single day. We also have a hope in our belief system from the Bible that we will see our dead loved ones again. So I kind of like to think that maybe the way that I viewed my mom when I was little will change, you know, as an adult, but I think it will change too when she comes back to the earth. She's resurrected and I can really get to know her for all eternity.
Thank you, Pam. Now I'd like to hear from a longtime family friend, Kelly Ella Luani, who would like to say a few words.
Didn't realize I was following the girls. Not appropriate. So Ashley and I had been thinking about what we loved most about Auntie Posey, and there were a few things that had stood out in our memory. I'm going to Marilyn Monroe. First was how we called her Auntie Posey. For all of you here, we are not actually blood related, but we started doing that when we were in our early teens, and in true Auntie Posey form, she laughed, she went with it, and she treated us like her nieces. From vacations to family events, we adopted ourselves into her family, and she embraced us fully. She had an amazing way of laughing at all my jokes, even when I'm sure they were not that funny. Some of them are gold. She loved to smile and she loved to laugh. I met up with Pam at one of Posey's chemo treatments a year ago. And it's so somber walking into a cancer treatment facility. But once we got in and we pulled up a chair, I kid you not, we had so much fun and laughed so hard with her that people started staring. So she was just so full of happiness, even in the face of all her trials. But another quality of hers that we admire so much is her faith that she passed on to all 4 of her children. Together, her and Uncle Jim, I'm going to give you some credit.
Yeah.
They have an unwavering faith that left a lasting impression on their family. That's something that I'm sure she was so proud of. I'm also sure that it brought her much needed comfort as she was nearing the end of her life. She knew that Jehovah would keep her firmly in his memory, and she also knew that her children were all serving him, and she had faith that she would be able to see them again very soon. Just a little while longer, and she will school us with her gardening abilities again. But until then, we are left remembering her as someone whose heartfelt devotion to Jehovah and to her family, blood and adopted, is why we loved her so much.
Beautifully said, Shelley. Thanks. I'd like to spend just a moment to pay homage to our family members who are here in this beautiful spot already. My grandfather did not know Posey, but I think they shared a lot. He was from Poland. He grew up essentially a serf, an agricultural and migrant agricultural worker who took care of horses, raised fruits and vegetables. I think that the 2 of them would have shared a great deal. And although, as I say, they did not know each other, I feel fairly confident in saying that had my grandfather known Pose, then he would have welcomed her here to share this spot with him and with my grandmother. Now, my parents did know Posey. They lived next door for almost 40 years, and my parents loved Posey very, very much. And I am quite sure that my mother and father find great comfort in knowing that they will share their final resting place with Posey as well. Now, when my initial comments this morning, I said that we came here not only to grieve, but to seek some solace and comfort. And so I would now like to call upon my brother John. My brother Jim has asked John to come and to offer some scriptural thoughts for us to consider.
Even if we say John Crane can see it. Okay. Well, those are some very nice comments that you all made. The history that our family has here, and also the children's views of things, and going back to those beautiful poems that you wrote, Pamela. I'd like to share some other things, though, that, as Rob mentioned, were comforting. If you haven't read it yet, this week in the Milton Times, we have published a tribute to Posey, the obituary column. Rob wrote most of what is written. He wrote it beautifully, and as he has already done this morning, he really captured the essence of her life in just a few paragraphs. I personally have already put in my reservation for Rob to compose my obituary when that time comes. Some of you may want to get on the list as well. So. But in the tribute that Rob put together, the family asked Rob to include one sentence, and I'd like to read that sentence to you right now. The sentence says, in essence, "We, the family, find comfort knowing that she has passed safely into Jehovah's memory." We, the family, find comfort knowing that she has passed safely into Jehovah's memory. So interesting that Jim and the children wanted to say that. And what were they thinking? Well, were they finding comfort? Well, partly because they know that the Bible assures us that there will be a resurrection of righteous and unrighteous. And Posey for certain will be among those who are brought back to life in a paradise, as Pamela has already made reference to. But it's comforting too to know that in God's perfect and awesome memory, when he restores her to life, he will bring her back with all the wonderful qualities and characteristics that she possessed, all the memories that she had during her 66 years on this earth. Posey believed those things firmly, and she found comfort in that hope as well. And it's partly why she was able to live her last weeks in such peace and calmness. But we all take comfort from other sources as well. Jim told me this week that there has been an amazing outpouring of support for him from family and friends and neighbors. Your being here this morning in the cold and the wind is all part of that support, and he feels the comfort of your caring. It matters to him. So thank you for being here for that. But there's another one who is invisible, but in our presence today, who feels what we feel, the grieving that we feel over the loss of a loved one. And it is our Heavenly Father that we are so conscious of, and so faithful to. Posey was faithful to Jehovah as well throughout her entire life, very faithful and firm in her devotion. And our Heavenly Father knows the grief that we're experiencing, and he is eager to help. And we know this from the scriptures. There's an interesting passage in John chapter 11 where it describes Jesus going to Bethany to resurrect his friend Lazarus. And Lazarus has been dead for some days now, and Jesus is absolutely certain that he will resurrect him to life. But upon entering the home of Lazarus, he meets his sisters, Martha and Mary. And they are very grieved, very distraught over the loss of their brother. And what amazing thing that happens is that the Bible account says that Jesus groaned with grief. And it also says that he gave way to tears. He felt their pain so much that it caused him to cry and groan, like many of us do when we lose a loved one. But it's remarkable because he knew that he was going to successfully resurrect Lazarus. And yet he still felt the pain and grief of that family. Jesus is a perfect reflection of his Heavenly Father. And in his behavior and in that Bible account, we learn how our Heavenly Father feels about us. He has lost those that he loves as well, and he's eager for us to come back. We know that he feels an eagerness for us because in Job chapter 14, the account relates how concerning those who would be brought back to life, the Bible says that the Bible says that God would have a longing for the work of his hands. Some translations say that he would have a yearning for the work of his hands. He wants people, especially those who have been faithful worshipers of his, to come back to life. We find comfort too in another way. It's our invitation to pray to God, to open up our hearts to him, and to let him know how we feel about any different tribulation that we're experiencing. We're urged to do that. And in Philippians, we're told that if we petition God on any matter, that the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard our hearts and our minds. What a nice thought. And so we're invited all to pray in that way. And finally, let me mention that there will be a time, the Bible says, when the last enemy, death, is brought to nothing. We can all have a hope for that time when only everlasting life will prevail. So now at this point, it seems appropriate that we take God up on his invitation to approach him in prayer. And so I ask you to join me in prayer to God.